For over 100 years, feminism has attempted to redefine what is femininity, away from its traditional role as a complement to masculinity. The results have been millions of confused men and women, as well as a general disrespect for true femininity and masculinity. Instead of pushing women to be poor imitations of men, true femininity promotes complementary roles for men and women. In this podcast, I discuss the role of the pro-feminine movement with Coach Jennifer Cross of Fascinating Womanhood. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi.
So, what is the pro-feminine movement?
I'm so glad you asked. This is the perfect time for a resurgence of the pro-feminine movement, which actually started in 1963 when Helen Andelin had wrote the first book, Fascinating Womanhood, which coincidentally, came at the time that Betty Friedan's book came out, really, and they're completely polar opposite books. And I don't know how many millions of copies Betty Friedan's book has sold. I know that Helen's book has sold 6 million copies almost. So it's really what's happening now is a resurgence of the pro-feminine movement that was stifled in the 80s and 90s because it doesn't work. Feminism does not work. Feminism is bad for women. It actually alienates men and women. It makes women victims and demonizes men when we should be teammates. I mean, we should be
complementary.
Complementary and more than equal. I mean, my dad, growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, he said women were on a pedestal. He just knew that. He was born with the knowledge of that. That's not true anymore. We have taken ourselves off the pedestal. So the pro-feminine movement is the belief that women are the divine adornment of civilization, and that our role, our duty as women, as wife, mother, homemaker, is where we will find our greatest happiness and source of accomplishment and do the best for civilization. That is not to say a woman cannot work. I mean, that's such a silly argument. And that's what feminism always wants to go off and say, well, you're saying women should be childish and not work and subservient, submissive slaves. And I'm like, no, actually, we're not. You're saying that. That is not what womanhood is all about and never has been.
Well, they created a false narrative of some oppressive patriarchy and said you can escape that by going to work for some guy in an office building where you'll sit there for 8 hours a day typing letters for him. As if the home was slavery and the job was work, or what was freedom, And this was really, they created a false narrative so that they could offer a solution that was better than the false narrative they'd created.
And that's so true. And one of my favorite chapters in the book being released in November, Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, written by Dixie Forsythe, who was the eldest daughter of Helen Andelin. It's an amazing chapter on feminism, and it's called Thanks for the Pants. Isn't that great? Because literally it ruined, I mean, if you were, I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, all the while thinking, darn it, I missed it. I missed the best time to be a woman, because this isn't womanhood to me. I love men. I want to be a wife. I love being a homemaker. All the women around me were doing that.
Yep. But
the message to me was, you're better than that.
Yeah, as if being a homemaker was something that, anybody could do. That's easy, It's interesting how you mentioned them saying it is almost like being in a childlike state to be a homemaker, just because you're spending time with children, perhaps. But the reality is that women have always had an economic role in the family. And even during the brief period between the 1880s or so and the 1950s, when many Americans could afford to have the wife stay home and only be a homemaker as not having to have an outside job, women were still, during that period, really adding a lot to the family's income. So they would have vegetable gardens. They would help the husband with his career. They would do things around the house that saved money. But simply providing a retreat for the man to come home to, encouraging him and inspiring him greatly increases a man's earning potential. When a man can go to work and he knows that his wife has the home under control, everything is working smoothly, he doesn't have that worry. He can go to work and he can be the lion he needs to be at work so that he can come home and be comfortable and relaxed and have peace and love and the stress flow out of him. A lot of men say they're two different men. They're the men at work and they're the man at home.
Yeah, and that's why actually Aubrey Andolin's book, Man of Steel and Velvet, I know the Forsyth guys, the men, will rewrite that eventually. It's an amazing book. But you truly are a man of steel and velvet. Is that the ideal man, if you want to go to that, which we really should write a book on that. There is the ideal woman, which we talk about in Fascinating Womanhood Vintage. And just to let everybody know, ideal doesn't mean perfection, and it doesn't mean that this is the only kind of woman. What it means, it's the ideal woman from a man's point of view, and it teaches you what men are looking for in a woman, which you're never taught in school. So this every day, and I'm not even exaggerating, someone tells me, Jenny, please teach me how to be a woman. I was never taught how to be a woman. And if anything, they were taught to hate their womanhood.
I'm always surprised when I meet a lot of young women who do not know how to interact with men. Yeah. They don't know how to interact with a man, and it's overwhelming and stressful to them. And I really think the book is an important start, but you need one-on-one help because almost always that inability to deal with men, masculine men especially, women don't really like interacting with non-masculine men. They find it repulsive. But when they interact with masculine men, if they haven't got experience, their father wasn't very masculine, or they don't have a father, or they just don't have male relatives to give them that example, it's overwhelming. It's difficult for them to understand.
It is. Or they were with the kind of man who are like, great, the women are going to take over. I'm going to sit back and watch TV, drink beer, get fat, and let her do everything. And that's the plight of women nowadays. Yeah. And then they're wondering why they're so miserable and so tired. There's nobody home cooking meals and making a homey atmosphere. I mean, this beautiful room behind me didn't just happen. Yeah. You know, that my mother and my dad has always said that if it wasn't for your mother, I would have never been able to achieve the amount of success that I have. And my dad grew up on a farm. He was a farm boy in upstate New York. And if you could see the house, it's a beautiful home he has created, a beautiful life for him, his wife, and his children. And, you know, it didn't just come to him. It's not this, you know, magic. I mean, I know this is a whole other subject, but the whole white man thing. No.
Yeah, our privilege is that we worked intergenerationally.
My dad was not privileged actually at all. No.
My great, I think 3 greats back grandfather came from Scotland. It's the only relative I have from Scotland, and they came from dirt floors. It was his second family because his first wife had passed away. He had another wife when he was 70 who was 30, and had a whole bunch more kids. And they came to Canada with what they had on their back, basically. And they carved out a life for themselves in a very difficult part of the world where it was really still quite wild and quite savage. And that was the children's privilege, was that they had parents like that. That was their white privilege, is that they had good parents. And
that my dad and his father before him just worked their tails off in farming. And were smart with their money. They built their own homes, and these were beautiful homes. And my father got out of the farm. He went to the Army and then to college, put himself through on the GI Bill, and got a master's in business and became, you know, a senior VP of manufacturing. These are not easy jobs. He worked all the time. The stress was off the chart. Most women not want that job. You know, if you're talking about equality, most women would choose, I would rather be home in the comfort of my garden watching my children play than in the stressful fluorescent lights of a grievance meeting, being brought to tears because of these. And, you know, this is a man's world, a lot of these jobs. And there are women who can do them, and that's great. You need to do that if that's your calling. We're all about females being educated. We have to raise the women, or the people of the world, right? But what I love about the pro-feminine movement is it's saying you are a woman, you are feminine, embrace that, inspire masculinity, and live a lifelong love affair with the man of your dreams. I mean, that's what women want.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that's what women want. That's a deep biological need. That's not a cultural thing, because the culture absolutely does not promote that.
Oh, no.
Billions are spent every year, charities, government, big industries, to encourage women into STEM fields, into business, into anything they can do, because there's a lot of money to be made by greatly expanding the workforce, and for universities by, many universities are 60% women in the university, and yet they still make significantly less than men when they get out, because they just don't want to have the cutthroat, high-stress jobs that the men want. I know a young lady, she said to me, I don't know why I'm going to university, all I want to do is have babies.
That was I was saying that to myself all through my college years. Why am I here? I'm glad I did, because my first marriage failed. My degree came in handy. But if I would have just focused on getting the right guy the first time around, there would have been no need for any of that. I would have still gone to school. That would have been fine, but no.
Well, you might have gone to school after your kids were old enough to go to their school.
That's what my older sister did. It was great. She was home while her children were young and went and got a bachelor's and later in life. That's what I wish I would have done, but whatever, life is life. But so many, and you get this too, women in over 30 coming to us terrified with that biological clock ticking. First of all, they haven't reached their college goals. They have or their career goals, tons of college debt. It's astronomical amount. You can't even imagine paying it off. How could you ever get married? You are now a slave to your job to pay that debt.
Yeah.
That's it. What you're choosing. Instead of, maybe living in a quaint little home with a beautiful baby in your arms, living what you were born to do, which was make beautiful human beings and civilians, people who create civilization. I don't think there's anything better. That's why women are the gatekeepers to civilization and men are the builders. And
well, women get to choose which men have children.
That's true.
That's immensely powerful. Men can create, we basically create civilization. We lay the pipes, we build the bridges, we make the skyscrapers go up. But women get to choose which men have children, which means they get to choose the type of generation that is born next. Will they choose wisely? Will they choose strong masculine men? Or will they choose men that, since they've been taught that masculinity is evil, are they going to choose men that aren't masculine?
That's the
and we get a generation of weak men.
Yes, and we've got to stop it, and women have to stop it as the gatekeepers to civilization and the gatekeepers to procreation. It is our fault what's happened. We have to take back the home. We have to say to our husbands who were born and brought up in feminism thinking that we should work full time as well as raise children. No, honey, I'm sorry. I need to stay home and raise the children and take care of you in the home. And I promise to live within your income, ladies. If you want this life, you must show him that you can live within his income. You are very frugal with money and you are not materialistic. Yep. Because a lot of guys have this huge fear of finances because of materialistic world, and you demand this and you have to have your nails done and all of this. Well, if you learn to live in his income, if you truly want to be a wife, a mother, and a homemaker, learn to live on a lot less.
Yeah. Do you want a few more square feet in your home or another child? These are often the decisions you have to make in these circumstances. And the reality is most children, and I ask kids this, I ask my own son this, they want siblings they don't care about. They're perfectly happy to all pile up in one bed if they needed to when they're little to get by. Like they love kids love living poor. You'd be surprised. And you can be a lot happier with less things often than you can with more things because of the sacrifices you have to make to get those things. You have to live in an unnatural way often in order to accumulate stuff. Then you have to maintain the stuff. And then you have to figure out where you're going to store it. And you have to pay the storage fees. So,
and then you worry what if you lose it?
Yep.
It's just not worth it. And I've lived poor for my single mom years. I mean, the first few, I think I made $1,000 a month. My rent was $800. So
Yeah.
I've been there raising 3 children on $1,000 a month. I had, and my kids we go back to those times. They said, Mom, those were the best years. We had so much fun. So this is what we did. We biked, we went on picnics, we went on mostly a lot of walking. I was a lot thinner back then. I was in great shape. A big deal would be, let's walk to Cub Foods and get, each get $1 for ice cream or a candy and rent a movie at Blockbuster and walk home. And we make popcorn. And it was just that I was doing something with them. We didn't have cable. We didn't have a lot of the things that a lot of the families had in the early 2000s. I lived in a well-off neighborhood, and I was like the only single parent in that neighborhood. And I beat myself up every day about, I can't give them this and that, and now come to find out, really, those were the best years for the kids.
And if you had put your number one focus into your work, you would have earned a lot more money, and your children would have been miserable.
Yeah, there's a story behind that too, and because I did have to. That actually ended up happening, but I don't want to make this all about me, because that ended up happening, and because of the choices I made. So,
yeah.
But the truth is, they were happy as could be. I wish I had known that with me doing what I was doing. It just got so exhausting, ladies. The single mom life.
Well, no, the best way to avoid that.
Well, here's the truth. Men have more testosterone, more muscle mass, and more energy. They need less sleep. They are physically able to work longer hours and be less affected. We don't. We actually even have thinner skin. I mean, literally and physically.
Well, and our feedback to competition is different. You see, if you get a group of men together and the way to motivate them is to create a competition, and we will be. I'm talking the men we're allied with. We'll be hard on the other men. If you're the weak link in the group, you're going to get beat up not necessarily physically, but you're going to get pushed to be no longer the weak link, and then whoever becomes the weak link after you gets pushed again. When you treat women the way you would treat men in industry or in business, most women will break down and cry.
They will, and they'll say, "I'm being abused."
Yep. And all you're doing is we're treating you equally.
Exactly.
We give you exactly what you want.
Women are not tough enough. Very few women are. I have to say, there are some women who definitely are. In fact, there was a woman who actually, when my dad retired, a woman came in and took over his job, and she was great. Yeah. He was really impressed by her.
Well, and there is certain roles that women play very well in business. I always talk about in business you need to have at the top, the board of directors has to be like a family, and there needs to be a father role in the family who's in charge of choosing who comes into the business and building them up. There needs to be a mother role to help comfort people and reduce their stress, and usually a woman plays that role very well.
And usually HR, I would think.
Yeah, often HR. It's usually a very feminine woman, and her preoccupation is trying to figure out what everybody needs and how they can be made to feel happy in their job. And sometimes all that's needed is her presence to come through in her beautiful floral dress and heels and smile at the men and say, "Oh, wow, you guys are doing a great job. Does anybody need anything? Is the lighting in here okay?" And stuff like this. And is the coffee okay? Do you guys like the coffee we've been buying? And this type of stuff. And to make the men feel a bit of a feminine touch while they're at work.
I have to say, I was a receptionist for many years in different jobs. It was my favorite role because I was the gatekeeper to that company. And I was like, "You guys like that coffee? Ooh, I'm bringing you." I was mothering the whole office. It was so fun. And I had so much power. I meant to say this you mentioned, I mean, if raising the humans of the world isn't powerful, I don't know what is. So because look at the result of what's happened, women, it's our fault. People say that's a little harsh. Well, you know what? It is. It's our fault. The role of the female in an office is extremely important as well in your job as nurturer, taking care of all of everybody's needs so that they can do their job.
Yep. Yeah, and it is interesting that where women are most economically productive is when they are being feminine, when they are doing something feminine. So You know, as like you said, the secretaries are make friends with the secretary if you want to do business with a company. Make friends with the women who are the secretaries. Bring them some chocolate. Bring them a flower. It works great, and this will get you a lot farther. Because there are a power nexus in there, because successful men do like to have some feminine women around generally, and I find even the women in business who are very successful don't always imitate the masculine way of being successful. They will restructure things so that it works well for them in a feminine way. And I think getting back to the pro-feminine movement, it's really about respecting femininity. Feminism was or is very disrespectful of femininity, because it tells you that's not enough. Being a woman is not enough. You also have to be a man. You have to be a woman and you have to be a man, and then you have to be better than men. And it's disrespectful of masculinity because it also doesn't teach the value of masculinity, but rather that it's a blockage or it's a barrier to women being successful.
It's a threat.
It's a threat. And so the reality is the pro-feminine movement, to a large extent, is about having real respect for femininity again, and masculinity as well. And I think that part of it, that redeveloping the cultural respect for the natural gifts that we have, whether you believe they're God-given or whether you think that this is how we evolved or what, it doesn't matter how you think we got them, those are what is natural for us. We've had the same basic roles for thousands of years, and we're very unhappy. Women are much unhappier now than ever before. I think almost half of women are on psychotropic drugs, so mind-altering drugs.
Yep.
And that's the women that are on prescription drugs. Then there's lots of women who drink and smoke for energy, drink to numb their pain, and do other negative habits.
I believe the angry feminists, these nasty women, are the ones that are most in need of a loving masculine man.
Yeah, and yet they're the ones least likely to get loving masculine man.
They don't, because they'll tell you they don't want it and they don't need it, and they've got their lesbian lover and whatever, or free sex whatever, and then they grow up and they're 35 and they're alone and they have no prospects.
Yeah.
That's what it be called. And then they're in our offices.
I talked to another man earlier in the week, and we were talking about this, that in our lives, we don't allow low-quality women into our life. And so for us, higher quality men, sometimes what happens is we don't realize that gradient that's there, because our wives are great, our female friends are great. I mean, I'm friends with you, you're great. These are the kind of women in our life. And it doesn't matter, it's the young women and the old women, all the women I meet are generally very high quality. And it is difficult for men who are younger, who are going to college, who are forced to associate with these low quality women. They end up feeling very bitter about it. I hear a lot of all women are like X. Okay? Now there are some characteristics that all women share. But if you believe that all women are horrible feminist shrews, it's because you're spending time around the wrong kind of women, and that's because you're not setting good boundaries for yourself. And it is important for men as well to have these standards and boundaries, because it's really a mutually reinforcing cycle. So Fascinating Womanhood is a lot about encouraging masculinity and inspiring it.
Yes.
And good masculinity, healthy masculinity, is about inspiring and encouraging femininity as well. And so we help each other. We balance each other out. And we've been over 100 years, it's about 150 almost, of feminism. In the last, since the 60s, so almost 60 years, it's been going on overload. So, about 3 generations have been raised under feminism. And it's not a problem we're going to solve by snapping our fingers. It's going to be a lot of work. And it's a problem.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's the deprogramming. I realized when you used that word last week, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what we're doing. I have to sort of change my, I've changed the way I work with women now because of that word. because that's what I had to go through, a deprogramming process myself.
Absolutely. It's deprogramming, and it's feminism is essentially a cult. It's one of the most powerful cults in the 20th century. It is a branch of postmodernism, which comes from cultural Marxism, and it is a cult. It has its priests, which are those that promote feminism. It has its holy literature. It has its belief system, and I say belief in that it is not a system of facts, it's a system of assumptions. And to combat that, we only have to tell the truth. They have to put this tremendous billions of dollars promoting feminism. All we have to do is tell the truth to women and men.
And the proof of that is just walk onto a college campus and ask them why they don't like Trump, why you're okay with open borders, why did you like Hillary Clinton, why did you vote for whoever, and they have zero answers for you.
And everything that they talk about it's all because of emotions. Open your heart, and think of the children, and they're programmed.
It is.
And most people do not choose the programming that they've accepted. You and I have chosen the programming. You were programmed differently before, and at a certain point in your life you said, no, I don't like this program, it's giving me bad results.
Yeah.
I am going to reprogram myself. And you did it with some help from Fascinating Womanhood, with some trial and error.
Yeah.
And I've gone through reprogramming as well. And this is something that if you do it yourself, it takes a long time, it's a lot of work, and it's hard. Yes. Now, with the classes that you give, with coaching, with these things, you can reprogram yourself in months that took us over a decade to do.
Yes, because I had nobody for 20 years. I mean, FW was my best kept secret. And even though it did work and changed me and brought me a level of happiness internally that I can't even describe, once I was able to speak with like-minded women, and now teach it, and every day it brings it to a new level. And I find myself being a happier, kinder, more gentle, loving woman, exactly who I wanted to be. And I'm not perfect by any means, but I don't know. Life is very sweet.
Well, the Western notion of heroism is, despite our imperfections and our failings and our difficulties and our suffering, we still take the heroic path. That's the Western heroism tradition. And we are going through a collapse of an old order right now.
Okay.
There's a collapse of an old order. I think that's pretty easy to see if you watch the news. And the new order that's coming in is much more respectful of masculinity and femininity. Mm-hmm. The public at large has rejected feminism. That's why they are screaming so loud. They are screaming so loud because they're upset they've been rejected.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for saying that.
The question is what's next? That's up to us to decide what's next. We are influencers, and the more people that we can influence to help them like I said, we have to tell the truth. That's all we have to do is tell women the truth, tell men the truth, tell them the truth about relationships. And I am starting to see, even in mainstream sources, posts coming out about how much happier women are when they don't have premarital sex.
Great topic.
It's coming out in like the New York Times and journals which traditionally promote free sex and feminism are starting to at least show somewhat the other side.
Well, because there was all these clips from the Women's March of what was someone screaming, some celebrity rights for sex workers, or I don't even remember. I tried to block it out. I couldn't believe a woman was saying it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're coming to a point where there is going to be a change of systems. Changes of systems are highly chaotic. And it's difficult to know what will come next. It's not necessarily something better. It could be something worse. Mm-hmm. It's up to the individuals who have the capacity or the energy or the persuasive skills to convince society what should come next. It's up to us. It's up to the people watching these videos. Are you going to share this video? Are you going to bravely speak the truth?
Yes.
Or are you afraid? If you're afraid, you can't complain if things don't turn out well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, only the brave get to complain.
Yes, thank you. You're so awesome. I love the way you sum things up. And please share this video. Please don't be afraid. In fact, this is on our group. We have a group. It's accidentally called 21st Century because it didn't let me really finish naming it. And so actually we would be taking ideas for what we should call the group of men and women discussing these issues in an intelligent way without name calling. It's been great. Men and women of all races and religions. So please come to that group on Facebook. It's just called 21st Century now.
I'll put a link below to it because I think if I link to it the right way, even when the name changes, it should still go. So thank you very much, Jennifer. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope that more people get interested in the pro-feminine movement, and it's especially how it emphasizes the connection between femininity and masculinity as being complementary. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Noah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'd like you to subscribe to this channel, and if you enjoyed this message, please join us at smv4k.com for more of the same. The real magic happens when you get one-on-one coaching to help you with your own reprogramming your life and changing your future. Please share this message and support us using the links below.